August 2016, a married couple stole 119,754 Bitcoin from one of the world's biggest crypto exchanges. At the time, that was worth about $72 million. They didn't use guns, they didn't even leave their house. They sat behind laptops and drained wallet after wallet in a single night. Then they held onto it for 6 years, while Bitcoin's price went from $600 to nearly $69,000 per coin. By the time the FBI knocked on their door, that $72 million had turned into $4.5 billion. And the wife had spent those 6 years posting TikToks, writing for Forbes, and making rap videos under the name Razzlecon, the crocodile of Wall Street. They thought they'd gotten away with it. They were wrong. Before we get into the full story, I want to flag 4 things that are going to come up, because the answers are genuinely not what you'd expect. 1. How do you hide $4.5 billion in Bitcoin? Every transaction on the blockchain is public. Anyone in the world can see where the money went. So what did they actually do to try to cover their tracks? 2. Bitfinex lost so much money overnight that they should have collapsed. Instead, they did something that had never been tried before in crypto, and it actually worked. What was it? 3. They had 6 years, theoretically billions of dollars, and a whole world to disappear into. So why were they still in a Manhattan apartment when the FBI showed up? 4. When agents finally searched their devices, they found $3.6 billion in Bitcoin hidden inside a file disguised as a popcorn tin. Let's start at the beginning. It's August 2nd, 2016. Bitcoin is trading around $600. The crypto industry is still small, loud, and almost completely unregulated. And Bitfinex at that point is one of the biggest Bitcoin exchanges on the planet. Serious volume. Millions of dollars moving through it every day. If you wanted to trade Bitcoin at scale in 2016, Bitfinex was one of the main places you went.
The exchange had recently switched to a security system built by a company called BitGo, based on something called multi-signature technology, multisig for short. The idea was solid on paper. Instead of one password unlocking your Bitcoin, you'd need multiple approvals from multiple parties before any transaction could go through, like a safe deposit box that needs 2 different keys turned at the same time. The problem wasn't the concept. The problem was how Bitfinex actually built it. The implementation had a gap, not obvious, not easy to find, but real, and someone found it. That night, whoever was behind the attack moved fast. They went through individual user wallets one by one, authorizing transactions, sending Bitcoin out to external addresses. By the time Bitfinex team understood what was happening, 119,754 Bitcoin was gone. The reaction inside the crypto world was immediate and brutal. Bitfinex froze everything. No trading, no withdrawals. And they were staring at a hole in their books that should have been fatal. But instead of shutting down, they announced a plan that most people in finance dismissed as either desperate or delusional. They issued BFX tokens. Every user on the platform, not just the ones whose wallets were directly hit, took a 36% cut to their balance. If you had $10,000 on Bitfinex, you now had $6,400 in real money and $3,600 in these tokens that represented a debt the company owed you. People were furious, understandably. But Bitfinex followed through. Within 8 months, they'd redeemed every single BFX token at full face value. People who held on got their money back. People who panic sold on secondary markets got whatever they'd accepted at the time. It was a genuinely unusual recovery. It kept the company alive, and it meant Bitfinex never stopped pursuing the stolen Bitcoin, which matters because that pursuit eventually helped bring the whole thing down.
Meanwhile, the person who took that Bitcoin was already working on the problem of what to do with it. That person was Ilya Lichtenstein, a tech entrepreneur, originally from Russia, who moved comfortably in startup and blockchain circles without drawing much attention to himself. Smart, methodical, not particularly flashy, the kind of person who's easy to underestimate. His wife, Heather Morgan, was harder to miss. She wrote articles for Forbes about sales strategy and entrepreneurship. She ran a consulting company called Salesfolk. She spoke at business events, and in her spare time, she recorded rap videos as Razzlecon, a name she built from Razzle Dazzle and Genghis Khan. One of her music videos has her dancing in a fur coat in what appears to be a New York subway station. She posted it in 2021, at a point when the Bitcoin she and Ilya allegedly held was worth somewhere around $4 billion. That detail says a lot about where their heads were at. But for the first few years, the plan to hide the money was actually working. Ilya's approach was built around a fundamental truth about Bitcoin. Yes, every transaction is recorded on the blockchain and visible to anyone, but a Bitcoin address is just a string of characters. It doesn't come with a name attached. So So while investigators could see that 119,754 Bitcoin had moved to certain addresses on August 2, 2016, knowing who controlled those addresses was a completely different problem. His solution was a Bitcoin mixer, specifically one called Chip Mixer. The mechanics are straightforward. You send Bitcoin in, it gets pooled with other users' funds, shuffled through a series of transactions, and you receive an equivalent amount back with no direct transaction link to what you originally deposited. The goal is to break the chain of evidence on the blockchain so that the stolen coins look like clean coins. Ilya layered this with other techniques. He converted Bitcoin into other cryptocurrencies and back. He used dozens of different wallets. He made thousands of small transactions specifically designed to make the trail as complex and time-consuming to follow as possible. For a while, it looked like it was working.
What Ilya didn't fully account for was a team inside the IRS Criminal Investigation Cyber Unit whose specific job was to follow exactly this kind of trail. These weren't your standard tax auditors. This unit had been building expertise in blockchain analysis for years, working alongside companies like Chainalysis, a firm that had developed software specifically designed to trace cryptocurrency transactions across wallets, exchanges, and mixing services. The key insight behind their work is this: mixing doesn't erase transactions, it adds complexity on top of them, and complexity, given enough time and the right tools, can be unwound. If analysts can identify even one output address from a mixing operation, maybe because it eventually connected to an exchange that required identity verification, they can start building a map. One confirmed address leads to another. Ilya made mistakes, not dramatic ones, not obvious ones, but across thousands of transactions over several years, he left enough of a pattern that investigators could piece together where the money had gone and eventually start closing in on who was moving it. By 2021, the picture had come together enough that investigators were ready to move, and 2021 happened to be the year Bitcoin went completely vertical. When Ilya took the Bitcoin in 2016, it was worth $600 a coin. By November 2021, it hit an all-time high of just under $69,000. That meant the 119,754 Bitcoin he was sitting on, still mostly untouched, still hiding in wallets, had grown to somewhere around $8 billion on paper. He hadn't done anything except hold it. He'd become, entirely by accident, one of the most successful Bitcoin holders in history, with money that belonged to Bitfinex customers. By the time of the arrest in early 2022, the price had pulled back, but the stash was still worth approximately $4.5 billion. On February 8, 2022, federal agents went to Ilya and Heather's apartment in Manhattan. No chase, no standoff. They were just there. When investigators went through their devices, they found the bulk of the stolen Bitcoin, around 94,000 coins, worth roughly $3.6 billion, stored in an encrypted file on Ilya's cloud account. The file was inside a folder made to look like a popcorn tin. Inside the popcorn tin were the private keys to the wallets, and alongside those keys, Ilya had kept detailed notes, a record of the different wallets, the amounts, the techniques he'd used. He documented his own laundering operation. The total seizure across everything investigators found came to approximately $3.6 billion, at the time the largest financial seizure in the history of the Department of Justice. Both Ilya and Heather eventually pleaded guilty. Ilya cooperated extensively with prosecutors. He walked them through his methods in detail, information that's since been used to build cases against other crypto criminals and improve the government's understanding of how mixing operations work. Heather's cooperation was more limited, and her legal team pushed back on the extent of her involvement. Her position was that she hadn't fully understood the scope of what Ilya was doing. The government disagreed, but took her cooperation into account regardless. Sentencing came in 2024. Ilya got 5 years, Heather got 18 months. The reaction split pretty cleanly along predictable lines. People who focused on the scale of the theft thought the sentences were absurdly light, and that's a reasonable position. $4.5 billion is not a number that maps neatly onto 5 years. On the other side, federal sentencing guidelines give significant weight to cooperation, and both of them had cooperated, Ilya especially. The information he provided had real investigative value. There's also the recovery to consider. Almost everything came back. Bitfinex's users, after years of uncertainty, got their money.
The question of why they stayed in New York is worth sitting with, because it doesn't have a clean answer. The practical side of it, converting $4.5 billion in Bitcoin into usable cash, quietly, without setting off alarms at exchanges or banks, is genuinely difficult. Most of the stash was illiquid in a real operational sense. Having the private keys doesn't mean you can spend the money freely. Moving it in large amounts would have been extremely risky. But there's probably something else going on too. People who pull off complicated financial crimes and don't immediately get caught tend to develop a certain confidence in their own judgment. The more time that passes without consequences, the more that confidence grows. By 2021, 5 years in, Bitcoin booming, no arrest, they may have genuinely believed the investigation had gone cold, that the trail was too complex, that they'd won. Heather's public persona fits that read. She wasn't hiding, she was performing, posting, writing, building a brand. That's not the behavior of someone who thinks they're about to get arrested. So where things stand now, Ilya is in federal prison, somewhere in the middle of a 5-year sentence. Heather served 18 months and is out. Bitfinex is still operating, which, given everything, is its own kind of remarkable. The recovered funds went through a complex forfeiture process, with portions going back to the exchange and portions to the US government. And the IRS cyber unit and Chainalysis have both grown significantly, in budget, in capability, and reputation, partly on the back of cases like this one. The thing this case actually settled, more than anything else, is the question of whether crypto is a safe place to hide stolen money. The answer, it turns out, is no. Not if you're going up against investigators with the right tools and enough patience. The public nature of the blockchain, the thing that was supposed to make crypto transactions untraceable, is exactly what made this investigation possible. Every transaction Ilya ever made with that Bitcoin was sitting there, permanently, waiting to be followed. Cash disappears. Bitcoin leaves a record. That's the part of the story that matters beyond Ilya and Heather. It changed how law enforcement approaches crypto crime. It changed how exchanges think about security. It gave regulators concrete evidence that blockchain analysis works at scale. And it all started with a gap in a multisig implementation, a single night of methodical theft, and a decision to hold on to the money instead of moving it. A decision that, in the end, made it much easier to find.